So, today we're diving into a series of stories that are basically designed to turn our expectations completely upside down. They're all about fairness and power and status, and this really radical idea that just flips the script on who actually ends up on top. I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. Imagine you put in a full, hard, 12-hour day. Your coworker, they just waltz in for the last hour. At the end of the day, you both get your pay, and it's the exact same amount. How would you feel? Cheated? For sure. Confused? Definitely. Well, that exact scenario is right where our story kicks off.
We start with a parable, a short story with a lesson about some workers in a vineyard. But this isn't really about farming. It's more like a puzzle about what we think is fair.
So the setup is kind of weird. A landowner goes out multiple times a day to hire people. He gets a crew right at the start of the day, then another one at 9 a.m., he comes back again at noon, then at 3 p.m., and get this, he even hires a final group at 5 p.m., when there's only about an hour of daylight left to work.
Okay, so when payday comes, something absolutely wild happens. The landowner tells his foreman to pay everyone, but to start with the people who were hired last. And one by one, every single worker, from the person who worked just 1 hour to the guys who were there all day, gets the exact same wage, 1 denarius, which, by the way, was considered a good, fair wage for a full day's work. You can just feel the outrage, right? The workers who got there at sunrise, who sweated through the hottest part of the day, they are furious. And from their point of view, it's a huge injustice. They did the most work, they deserve more money. I mean, their complaint sounds completely reasonable, doesn't it?
But the landowner, he sees it totally differently. He just flips the whole argument on its head. He's like, look, I paid you exactly what we agreed on. I haven't been unfair to you. The real question is, are you mad because I decided to be incredibly generous to someone else? He completely reframes it. It's not about fairness. It's about his radical generosity. And this is the mic drop moment of the whole story. This confounding principle that seems to break every rule of hard work and getting what you deserve. The last will be first, and the first will be last. Just hang on to that phrase, because it is the key to everything else we're about to see.
And this theme just keeps on rolling. Right after telling this really confusing story, Jesus has to deal with the exact same problem with his own closest followers. They're all trying to figure out who gets the best spot.
So the scene gets incredibly serious really fast. Jesus pulls his 12 disciples aside and tells them, in pretty grim detail, what's about to happen to him. That he's going to be betrayed, condemned to die, mocked, tortured, and crucified. It's a really dark, heavy moment.
And the timing on this is just staggering. The mother of 2 of his disciples, James and John, comes right up to him. She kneels down and asks for the ultimate power positions for her boys, the seats of honor right next to Jesus in his kingdom. It's a moment of just unbelievable tonal whiplash.
And yeah, you can probably guess how that went over. The other 10 disciples hear about this little power play and they are indignant. They're angry. And why? Well, because they wanted those spots for themselves. This race to be first is causing all this jealousy and division right in the inner circle.
So Jesus gathers all of them together. He sees the ambition, the jealousy. He sees they're just not getting it. And he uses this moment to finally, explicitly spell out what he means by the first will be last.
He lays out this really stark contrast. He tells them, look around you. You know how power works in this world. Rulers lord it over people, high officials exercise authority. It's all about being on top, being in charge. But in my kingdom, he says, it's the complete opposite. If you want to be great, you have to be a servant. If you want to be first, you have to be a slave.
So, this is the core idea, servant leadership. Greatness isn't measured by how many people you have working for you. No, true greatness is found when you willingly choose to put the needs of other people ahead of your own. It's a total redefinition of what power and status even mean. And then he gives the ultimate example, himself. He says his whole purpose for being here isn't to have people serve him, but for him to serve others, all the way to the point of giving up his own life. He's not just teaching this principle, he is living it.
Now, theory is one thing, right? But seeing something in action really makes it stick. So, this final scene in the sequence shows us this great reversal happening in a very real, very tangible way. As Jesus is leaving the city of Jericho, he's got this huge crowd following him. And sitting there on the side of the road are 2 blind men. Now, in that society, they were quite literally the last. They were beggars,
totally marginalized, seen as unimportant. But they hear Jesus is passing by, and they just start shouting for mercy.
And what does the crowd do? The people who are physically closest to Jesus, they try to shut them up. They tell them to be quiet. They're basically saying, hey, you're not important enough for his time. You're last, so stay in your place.
But these men, they refuse to be silenced. Their need is just too great. Their faith is too strong. So they ignore the crowd, they ignore the social pecking order, and they just shout even louder. They are demanding to be heard.
And this right here is the climax of the whole chapter. Jesus, the most important person in the entire scene, stops everything. He stops for the two people everyone else decided were the least important. He calls them over, he asks them what they want, he's filled with compassion for them, and he heals them. He literally puts the last first.
So, when we put all these pieces together, the parable, the argument between the disciples, the teaching, and the miracle, a really powerful and consistent theme just snaps into focus.
It's this clear pattern of reversal. In the vineyard, the last workers got paid first. With the disciples, the ones who wanted to be first were told to be last. Jesus, the leader, defined his whole mission as being the ultimate servant. And then, the men who were last in society were the ones given first priority.
And that brings us right back around to where we started. That puzzling kind of counterintuitive phrase suddenly makes a whole different kind of sense. It's not just about switching places. It's about a fundamental rethink of what's important. Generosity over merit, service over status, and compassion over power.
And all this leaves us with a pretty challenging question to think about. In a world that's always pushing us to get ahead, to climb the ladder, to be number one, this whole story asks us to just stop and reconsider how we define success. What does it really mean to be first?